what's going on with education and AI in the classroom? How has ChatGPT been sort of affecting how teachers teach, how students learn, and so forth? So, to give you my window on this, I recently taught for 3 months at the University of Austin a small seminar course, and just this past January through March. And my view as someone who loves ChatGPT personally, I use it every day. I'm I think I use it so much because I'm very intellectually curious and there's just always something that I want to know about
Yeah.
randomly. So it's like a massively fun tool for people like me. Um, and so I have like a generally positive outlook on it. I think people should use it. I think students should use it, and regardless of whether they should, they're going to. I'm also I don't believe that professors in general can detect when their students have used it. I'm not saying you can never detect it. Obviously, there have been many students have been caught using it on essays and so forth. But I think in general, students have a greater incentive to cheat really well than professors have to catch them. And obviously, the dirty little secret is that similar kind of to how you were saying, doctors don't like to tell their patients that there's nothing more I can do for you. You're a few months from dying. Professors don't want to catch their students cheating because it's a hassle for us. Like it's, God forbid, if I'm right about your cheating, that creates paperwork and meetings for me. Like literally creates extra work that I'm not getting paid for. And even let's say I have a really good bullshit detector, I'm right 95% of the time. Well, 1 in 20, I'm going to accuse a student of cheating who in fact did not cheat. That creates a much, much bigger headache for me because now I've actually harmed a student and now I could potentially be in trouble, right? So professors have almost no personal incentive to catch cheating. Students individually have a pretty strong incentive to cheat successfully because your grade goes up. So I don't, from an incentives point of view, I don't buy that professors as a class are going to win the war on cheating. And so my approach as a professor was to say, fine to use GPT as your personal research thinking buddy tutor at home. There are going to be no assessments that you could even possibly cheat on in this class. It's all going to be blue books. And if I could do it again, I would also go for the oral exam for variety, like maybe, in class quizzes, class participation, blue books. It's a cheat proof class, and to me, that's got to be the future of teaching. So, what do you make of this?
Yeah, so I taught a class. I've taught a few journalism classes, and the thing I always taught them pass fail. And the thing I always said was, I'm not going to try to catch you cheating. You are adults. You have a choice. You have a Washington Post columnist here, a Bloomberg columnist, who is going to teach you as well as she can what she knows about her profession. If you want that, this is pass fail. If you show up and you hand in something, you will pass, but I'm not going to try to make you get for your $250,000 the value that's here. Whatever that is, maybe there's no value. Maybe they should just come and sleep through my class, but I can't, you guys are in your 20s. You are old enough to go get killed in a war. And you are old enough to not old enough to drink because somewhat irrational policy laws, but my job is not to make you get something out of this. My job is to make it possible for you to get something out of this. But that was easier for me to do because it was pass fail, right? I think I think you're right that the incentives are bad, but I also think there's a bigger question, which is that, what I was saying is this is a pass fail class. It's like a half credit. It's not the difference between you going to grad school and not. So you should enjoy this class. You should only be here if you want to be here and learn something, and you should get what you can out of it. Be in the discussion, do this, right? Don't sit here and passively just try to, put the time in and grub the grade. Get what you can. But that's not really realistically how most people think about an education, right? The way most people think about a college education, and especially the incredibly expensive 4-year residential college experience that both you and I had, where you are not majoring in like engineering, is that the primary reason people are willing to pay 6-figure sums for that is to get the kid a good job when they get out. And the primary reason that that works is that getting into one of those schools, getting into an elite school, signals that you have usually a class background, that you have a certain network, that you have a certain amount of cognitive ability, a certain amount of conscientiousness. Not that much in my case. I was a really terrible student. But that signals that to employers. If you are coming from one of many schools, you have signaled that you can put your butt in a seat for 4 years, show up, turn in your assignments on time. And the value of what you actually learned in that class, it's quite unclear whether they value that at all, whether there's a low value. But if you look at the sheepskin effect, which is that there is a real discontinuity between finishing all but one semester of college,
right,
and finishing college
I
in the
remember
labor market. And it's not because they wait until the last semester to tell you all the good stuff, right?
Right.
You are signaling a lot of stuff about yourself.
This is Brian Kaplan's argument in the case against
Yes, this is Brian Kaplan's argument,
education.
Which I basically buy.
Yeah.
And so, but one of the things that it signals, right, is that you had to do all of these complicated, if you're a humanities major, you had to do a bunch of complicated research tasks, read a lot of stuff, assimilate it into some basically coherent idea about the world, and write that down in sentences that could be understood by another human being. They may not be the most glistening, beautiful prose in the entire world, but they can be read and comprehended. And the value of that skill is itself declining, right? AI is going to undercut the value of reading and writing, of doing what I do, what you do, which is reading and assimilating vast amounts of text and then translating it into words for other people. And colleges, I think, have not grappled with that more fundamental problem. I mean, first of all, they haven't grappled with the cheating problem. You're right. When I talk to academics, they're all just kind of, home baking solutions or not. Some of them have just given up. Some of them are being really innovative and designing assignments that you cannot cheat on because the object is to use AI to do something cool. Mm. That's like Mike Munger at Duke is doing this. But a lot of them are terrified. And I think the even bigger problem than that is that beyond the fact that the value of this signal is decreasing, is that like society loaded all of these different tasks onto universities. It loaded dating, finding a spouse, or at least finding some friends who can find you your spouse later. That's less relevant to your generation than to mine. But to my generation, that was a big thing. You would meet your boyfriend in college and hopefully you would marry that person, right? Not in the way that my mother's generation would joke about getting her MRS degree. We were also there to get a job, but, and hopefully maybe even learn something and become more interesting people. But, there was, dating was a big feature of it. We loaded sorting people for employers onto it. We loaded training onto it, onto this medieval institution that weirdly, the people teaching it have no idea, for example, what's happening in the job market at all. Mm-hmm. They're also really not selected for their ability to use AI well, right? If you wanted to design something that is going to prepare kids for the world of AI, if you were starting that from scratch, you would not go out and be like, you know what I need is a bunch of experts in 14th century Renaissance literature. That would not be your first choice, right? Who have spent their entire lives in archives reading and writing critical theory about their period, or political scientists, or go through the disciplines. And to be clear, I'm not denigrating what they do. I'm saying that if you were starting from scratch, you definitely would not be like, yes, what we need is a bunch of PhDs in sociology to handle this task. And that thing, and also, so the university is really unoptimized to handle the problems of preparing the workforce for AI. The signal, the thing, it wasn't well optimized to handle the problem of preparing people for the workforce of 1990 or 2010 either, but that didn't matter because the value of the signal was itself valuable, right? It was signaling abilities, some of which had been honed at university and some of which hadn't, but it was signaling a bundle of abilities that were valuable in the job market.
So hold on, can I stop you right there? So presumably, though, today it's still signaling a mix of IQ, conscientiousness, maybe to some degree competency at a certain higher upper class way of holding yourself. And wouldn't those all still be valuable even in a post AI world, even if this more narrow ability to basically do our kind of work is being competed away?
Sort of. I mean, I think that that's true for people who were in college when ChatGPT, but it's turtles all the way down. High school kids are using it too.
Sure.
And so ultimately what it may be signaling is that you are smart enough to cheat without getting caught, which is, I guess, a kind of, but you know, if you went to employers and were like, do you want a bunch of people who are smart enough to cheat without getting caught? They might have questions about, for example, should you put those people in your accounting department? And so I think, I do think it's a problem. Like the value of the signal is going to degrade so strongly, and the real value of the skill is also going to degrade. And the even bigger problem, now that I've copied it, is that the governance of universities is completely ill-equipped to handle any of this. Right? Everything's run by committee. No one's in charge. And so no one has the ability, even, you know, they're all forming committees on how to do AI. But what happens when the committee reports? Are people going to go out into the classroom, show people how to do it right, and then check back and make sure we're getting a valuable assessment tool? No. They're going to put out some guidelines and the professors will implement them with varying degrees of precision. And then that will be that. And the problem is a university is a bundle. So you can be Mike Munger and teaching a great AI optimized class. I've never been in his class. I know him personally, and I assume he's doing a pretty good job. But if your colleagues all over the university are bad at this and they are not, and people are noticing that graduates are coming out without skills that are useful to them, it doesn't do you any good to be the one guy who's good, because employers don't know who you are.
Right.
And so there's a real problem of how are you going to reform this when you have a faculty that's selected for their research abilities, not even their teaching abilities, and certainly not their AI abilities, when you cannot kind of reform the institution very effectively, when you can't reform classroom practice very effectively. I think universities have a massive problem that they have not really begun to confront. There are exceptions to this. People like Hollis Robbins are writing great stuff about this. But in general, I don't think they understand the scope of their problem. I think they understand the narrow problem of, like, we have a lot of kids who are cheating and we got to fix that. But you can fix it within class assessments, right? You can fix it that way. But those bigger problems of how do you make this institution that has basically been hiring its faculty for 50 years based on their ability to publish articles that almost no one else ever reads on quite narrow, specialized topics, and which has this crazy governance system that makes it very hard to change anything. How do you take that institution and transform it into an institution that is preparing kids for the AI job market?